Kalen adjusted the collar of his robe, which smelled faintly of recycled seaweed, paste, and desperation. The diplomatic station hummed around him, a mess of wires, blinking lights, and alien chatter that he suspected was mostly insults disguised as greetings. He kept his voice low and his eyes lower, especially when passing the quadrupedal Glorbian diplomats who had a fondness for sticking their antennae where they shouldn't. "Hey, Greg," Kalen muttered to the malfunctioning translator strapped to his wrist, which stubbornly insisted that everyone's name was Greg. "You're about as useful as a solar-powered flashlight in a black hole." The translator beeped back in something that sounded like a sneeze and then tried to translate Kalen's sarcasm into Talaxian, which resulted in a phrase roughly meaning, "The cosmic soup is pleasantly sticky today." Kalen sighed and slid it off his wrist. He was just about to retreat to the dim recesses of the station's cafeteria, where the best they served was something resembling gum-flavored protein slurry, when the door hissed open with the subtlety of a starship's laser cannon. A figure stood silhouetted against the neon glow of the corridor, tall and poised, with black hair falling in waves that somehow defied gravity and ears that stretched longer than the usual Elevari diplomats. "You are the Talaxian scribe, correct?" she asked, voice smooth, but edged with something sharp enough to carve nebulae. Kalen blinked. "That would be me, unless Greg took my shift again." She stepped in without waiting for an invitation. "Good. Then you can come to my room." He hesitated. "You're asking me to come to your room. That's bold for a first meeting. Usually the aliens just beam me up or zap me into the nearest holding cell." She gave a dry smile, the kind that hinted at centuries of patience worn thin. "I find the latter inefficient and the former overused. Conversation is preferable." Kalen's mind raced. Was this some diplomatic trap? A test? Or maybe she just really liked terrible poetry. "Conversation, huh? Do you offer snacks?" She raised an eyebrow. "Only if you survive the trip." That was Kalen's cue to follow, mostly because his other options were decline and spend another week pretending to understand Glorbian etiquette, or hide in the mechanical bay until the station self-destructs. The corridor smelled faintly of ozone and recycled hope as they moved. Kalen noticed she carried no visible weapons, which was either a sign of supreme confidence or extreme foolishness. Probably the former, considering her reputation. Inside her room, the walls pulsed with softly shifting light, colors he could only describe as cosmic melancholy mixed with mildly annoyed starship. Crystalline armor plates floated in neat formation, like butterflies caught in a silent storm. "Welcome," she said, nodding toward a small device that buzzed quietly in a corner. "That is Mip, my star iguana. Harmless, unless you steal his sun lamp." Kalen crouched down to greet the creature, which inspected him with reptilian judgment. Mip blinked twice, a signal Kalen took as approval or maybe just confusion. He made a mental note not to bring seaweed paste near the creature. "So," she began, perching on a sleek chair that looked designed more for command than comfort, "what does a Talaxian scribe do when he's not pretending to be a Glorbian linguist?" "Mostly," Kalen replied, "I recalibrate translators, decipher bureaucratic nonsense, and occasionally try not to get vaporized." She chuckled. "Sounds thrilling. Thrilling if you enjoy existential dread and poorly calibrated laser warnings." Cyrith tilted her head, the light catching on the long sweep of her ears. "I'm tired of being feared," she admitted suddenly. "Feared by my people, by my enemies, even by myself sometimes." Kalen blinked. "That's oddly relatable." She smiled, a flicker of something fragile behind her usual stoicism. "You humans seem less afraid than most." "Why?" He shrugged, feeling oddly brave. "Maybe because fear is exhausting. Also because I've survived 3 near-death meetings, 1 questionable alien delicacy, and a translator that insists your name is Greg. If I'm not afraid now, it's probably insanity." Mip snorted softly, a sound that might have been a laugh. Sereth's gaze softened. "Perhaps you are exactly the kind of person I should talk to." Kalen glanced at the door, then back at her. "Well, I'm here, and I promise not to steal Mip's sun lamp. For now." A small smile tugged at her lips. "For now." And in that moment, amidst the humming lights and alien silhouettes, an unlikely conversation began, one that would unravel truths neither was prepared to face, but both desperately needed to hear. Cyrith settled deeper into her chair, the crystalline armor pieces around the room casting shifting reflections that looked like tiny trapped stars. Anu, she watched Kalen, who was awkwardly perched on the edge of a floating couch, his hands tangled in the sleeves of his robe, as if he was wrestling with an invisible octopus. So, she said, voice smooth but carrying a hint of amusement, tell me, scribe of dubious origin, how does one survive among the tangled politics of the station without accidentally insulting an ambassador's pet or being vaporized for a poorly chosen phrase? Kalen blinked, then smiled wryly. Survival strategy number 1. Never admit to understanding half the conversations. Just nod and say, interesting, a lot. Number 2, learn how to duck fast when laser warnings sound. Number 3, keep a small stash of emergency gum-flavored protein slurry handy. Not tasty, but it buys you time. Cyrith raised an eyebrow. Emergency protein slurry? Sounds delightful. It's like eating a shoe, Kalen said, but with slightly less chew resistance. She laughed. It was a sound that surprised even her, as if hearing her own laughter was as foreign as a human's touch. You have a peculiar sense of humor for someone who claims to be a scribe. Peculiar's my middle name, Kalen said, though he'd never legally changed it. Actually, my parents wanted to name me something that would make me stand out, but their system glitched, and I ended up with a name that sounds like a malfunctioning robot. Fitting, Cyrith mused, for someone living undercover on a station that's a magnet for chaos and diplomatic accidents. They sat in a silence thick with possibility. Then Mip, the star iguana, crawled onto Kalen's lap and began inspecting his robe with a series of deliberate sniffs, and what Kalen could only interpret as reptilian skepticism. Looks like you've been accepted, Cyrith said with a smile. Kalen wiggled uncomfortably, trying not to disturb Mip. I'm not sure if that's a good thing or a death sentence. Both, she replied. Welcome to my world. So, Lady Cyrith, Kalen began, what brings a warrior diplomat to ask a lowly scribe to visit her quarters? Not exactly the usual protocol. Cyrith's eyes flicked toward the floating armor pieces, which shimmered like silent sentinels. I'm weary of battles that never end, of the weight of expectation that crushes more than it empowers. I've grown tired of being a symbol rather than a person. Kalen nodded thoughtfully. That sounds exhausting. I suppose even a warrior needs a break from all the posturing and politics. She smiled faintly. Exactly. And you? What burdens do you carry beneath that calm demeanor? Kalen's smile faltered. Mostly the burden of pretending to be something I'm not. Humans aren't exactly welcome here. Not since the galactic salad incident. Cyrith cocked her head. Galactic salad incident? Oh, that was a diplomatic disaster of legendary proportions, Kalen said, shaking his head with a grin. Long story short, someone accidentally served a sentient plant species as a garnish, and things escalated quickly. Let's just say the salad didn't survive, and neither did my career prospects. She laughed, a genuine sound this time. Sounds like the universe has a sense of humor, albeit a cruel one. Or maybe it just likes to keep us on our toes, Kalen replied. Speaking of which, how do you handle the constant pressure of leadership? Cyrith sighed. By pretending I'm immune to stress while secretly binge-watching old holovids. Right now, I'm obsessed with a series called Who Stole My Plasma Goat? It's absurd, but somehow comforting. Kalen grinned. I know the feeling. Sometimes the best way to survive a cosmic mess is to find humor in the chaos. Agreed, she said. Tell me, what do humans find funny? Where do I start? Slapstick? Sarcasm? The fact that we've managed to survive this long without accidentally destroying ourselves with toasters. Cyrith raised an eyebrow. Toasters? Long story, Kalen said. But the gist is, humans have a knack for turning ordinary objects into potential death traps. It's both impressive and terrifying. They shared a laugh, the tension between them easing like the fading echoes of a distant supernova. As the hours passed, their conversation drifted from politics to philosophy, from alien customs to the peculiarities of human behavior. Kalen found himself fascinated by Sareth's candidness, her willingness to share vulnerabilities behind the armor she always wore in public. "You're not like anyone I've met here," he said quietly. "Most would have ordered me vaporized by now." "Maybe," she said, "but I'm tired of enemies. Sometimes I want to meet someone who doesn't see me as a threat." Kalen met her gaze, feeling an unfamiliar warmth. "Maybe that's why I'm here." A soft chime interrupted them, and the door slid open to reveal the station's AI interface, a hovering orb with blinking lights and a surprisingly grumpy voice. "Lady Cyrith, I regret to inform you that Ambassador Vrels of the Zytraxian Collective will be arriving in 5 minutes, and he is notably anti-human." Callan swallowed. "That sounds bad." Cyrith's eyes narrowed. "It is. We'll have to be careful." The orb added, "Also, someone has reprogrammed my humor settings to tell knock-knock jokes. I am not pleased." Kalen chuckled despite himself. "Sounds like the universe really is trying to keep us on our toes." Cyrith stood, a new determination in her stance. "Then we'll face it together. For now, Scribe, you are under my protection." Kalen smiled, feeling the weight of uncertainty, but also the spark of something unexpected. Trust. Kalen sat cross-legged on the floor of Cyrith's quarters, a stack of holographic data pads floating lazily above the table, like impatient fireflies. Mip, the star iguana, curled around his ankle, occasionally flicking its tongue as if to say, "Don't get too comfortable, human." Cyrith hovered nearby, arms crossed, watching him with an expression that balanced curiosity and amused suspicion. "So," she said, "you claim to be a Talaxian scribe, yet your handwriting curves like a drunken comet, and you keep quoting Earth poets I've never heard of. Are you certain you're not some sort of rogue historian from the galactic archives?" Kalen grinned, pushing up his sleeves. "I'm as human as they come. Well, except for the questionable fashion choices and the inability to make decisions without overthinking. But the handwriting? That's just my personal rebellion against neatness." Cyrith raised an eyebrow. "Fascinating. Humans do have peculiar habits." Kalen smirked. "Peculiar is one word for it. Another would be, why the heck did we invent forks that only work half the time? But I digress." She laughed, the soundlight but genuine. "You've been spending a lot of time here. Most scribes stick to their data consoles and avoid me like a plasma storm. Mostly because most scribes don't have armor that could double as a small moon," Kalen said. "Also, you throw knives during casual chats. That's intimidating." Sarith's smile twitched. "A necessary precaution. Conversations on this station can be lethal." "Good to know. So what's really going on, Sarith? You didn't drag me here just for witty banter and my questionable cooking skills. What are you hiding?" She sighed, pacing slowly, the armor pieces shimmering with each movement. "My people expect me to be the perfect warrior, the unbreakable leader. But beneath the armor, I'm just tired. Tired of the endless wars, the political games, the constant need to prove my worth." Kalen nodded thoughtfully. "Sounds exhausting. I guess even queens get lonely." She stopped and looked at him, eyes softer than he'd ever seen. "Lonely is an understatement. Sometimes I wonder if anyone would recognize me without the armor, without the title." Kalen smiled gently. "I think people forget that even the strongest need someone to just see them." Cyrith's gaze held his, and for a moment, the barriers between them blurred. Then the door chimed softly. "Lady Cyrith, incoming transmission from the council," a robotic voice announced. Cyrith frowned. "Not now." Kalen glanced at the console. "Want me to pretend to be a malfunctioning cleaning bot and block the call?" She chuckled. "Tempting, but no, I need to hear this." The holographic screen flickered to life, displaying the stern visage of Ambassador Vrels, his multiple eyes narrowing. "Lady Cyrith, your association with that human is concerning. The council demands you sever ties immediately." Kalen swallowed. "That's not subtle." Cyrith's jaw tightened. "I will handle this." The transmission ended, and she turned to Kalen. "They fear what they don't understand. You represent everything they distrust." Kalen shrugged. "I've been living in the shadows for years. Fear has a way of chasing you, no matter how fast you run. Sareth stepped closer. Then we face it together. No more hiding. Mip hissed softly as if agreeing. Kalen smiled. I think I'm going to like this alliance. Sareth grinned, a rare and beautiful thing. So will I, human. So will I. Kalen stood at the edge of the observation deck, arms folded, watching the swirling nebula beyond the reinforced glass. Sareth approached, her long ears twitching as if they picked up the distant hum of the station's core, a sound he was certain no one else noticed, but that somehow grounded her. You look like you're contemplating the meaning of existence, she said, voice smooth but teasing. Kalen glanced at her, raising an eyebrow. More like wondering how a star that's literally a cloud of gas can inspire so many philosophers and poets. Plus, I'm trying to figure out if it's socially acceptable to ask for a nebula-themed latte. She laughed softly, the sound blending with the soft buzz of the station's life support systems. I doubt the station bar serves anything that fancy, mostly recycled water and whatever passes for coffee. Ah, the glamour of space diplomacy, Kalen sighed. High stakes and low-quality beverages. Sareth leaned against the railing, watching the colors shift and dance. You've adapted well to this chaos, Kalen shrugged. When the universe throws you into a mess, you learn to swim, or at least dog paddle awkwardly. She smiled, a flicker of warmth in her gaze. I've never met a human quite like you. Your humor is disarming. Disarming is my specialty, Kalen said, grinning, especially when I forget my blaster and have to rely on bad jokes instead. She shook her head, amused. Bad jokes can be lethal in their own way. Their conversation was interrupted by the sudden chime of the station's alert system, a sharp, insistent tone that sent a ripple through the deck's calm. What now? Kalen groaned. Sareth's expression hardened. Security breach in the lower docking bay. Could be hostile. They moved swiftly, the gravity compensators in Sareth's armor activating with a soft whir. Kalen followed, dodging crew members and technicians as they raced through the corridors. At the docking bay, chaos unfolded. A group of unidentified figures had boarded a supply vessel, weapons drawn, faces hidden beneath sleek helmets that reflected the harsh overhead lights. Great, Kalen muttered. Just what we needed. Space pirates with a flair for dramatic entrances. Sareth stepped forward, voice firm. Identify yourselves and stand down. The leader of the intruders stepped into the light, helmet retracting to reveal a familiar face. One of the station's disgraced former diplomats, rumored to have allied with a rogue faction. Sareth, the intruder sneered, always playing the loyal servant. How quaint. Sareth's eyes narrowed. You won't get away with this. Kalen, feeling the weight of the moment, glanced at Sareth. Need backup? She smirked. Always. With a swift motion, Sareth activated a concealed panel on her wrist, releasing a pulse that disabled the intruder's weapons. Mip darted forward, surprisingly agile, knocking helmets off and causing confusion. Kalen seized the opportunity, tossing a plasma net over two of the assailants. Come on, pirates! I'm a scribe, not a cage fighter. The leader cursed, retreating with the remaining intruders, but not before swearing, This isn't over, Sareth. As the docking bay returned to order, Sareth turned to Kalen, a hint of a smile on her lips. You handled yourself well. Kalen wiped sweat from his brow. I aim to please. Also, I'm really good at running away when things get messy. She laughed. We make a good team. Their eyes met, the unspoken understanding between them growing stronger amidst the stars and shadows of the station. Next time, Kalen said, let's try to have fewer gunfights and more coffee. Sareth nodded, a playful glint in her eyes. Deal, but only if you promise to bring the bad jokes. Kalen grinned. It's a package deal. Kalen stirred his third cup of synth coffee, watching the faint bluish glow ripple through the liquid as the station's artificial gravity made the droplets dance lazily. Sareth stood by the viewport, arms folded, her long ears catching the faint hum of the engines as if attuned to some secret rhythm. You ever think about what comes after all this? She asked, voice low. Kalen smirked, swirling his coffee. After being a human in a galaxy where no one quite trusts you, Probably figuring out how to make synth coffee taste less like burnt circuits. Sirith chuckled softly. One day you'll find a planet with better coffee, or at least better reasons to drink it. He raised his cup in a mock toast. To better coffee and better days. Their laughter filled the quiet room, a small island of warmth in a galaxy that often felt cold and unpredictable. It had been weeks since the docking bay incident, and the station's political tensions had eased, thanks in no small part to Sirith's unlikely alliance with the human scribe. The Council's initial distrust had softened, replaced by cautious curiosity and a grudging respect. "You've changed things, Callan," Sirith said, her gaze steady. "Not just with the Council, but with me. You made me see beyond the armor, beyond the duties and expectations." He leaned back, fingers tapping the table rhythmically. "And you made me realize that even in the vastness of space, connection matters. That being human isn't just about biology, it's about the choices we make." Sirith smiled, a genuine softness in her eyes. "I never imagined trusting a human, let alone seeking one out. Yet here we are." Kalen nodded. "Funny how the universe works. Sometimes it throws you into the deep end and expects you to swim. Sometimes it hands you a star iguana with a suspicious glare." Mip, perched on the windowsill, flicked its tongue as if on cue. Sirith laughed. "We've come a long way from the first awkward meeting. I almost vaporized you that day." "Yeah, I remember. You were very polite about it." "Don't make me kill you," Kalen quipped. "Best pickup line ever." She playfully swatted his shoulder. "You're impossible." The station's AI chimed softly. "Incoming transmission from the Galactic Council." Sirith exchanged a glance with Kalen. "Let's see what they want." The holographic image of the Council Elder appeared, her expression unreadable. "Lady Sirith, Kalen, the Council acknowledges the success of your partnership. Your efforts have forged a new path for interspecies cooperation. We extend our gratitude." Kalen grinned. "Finally, some good news around here," the Elder continued. "There is a matter of protocol to discuss, but that can wait. For now, enjoy your moment." The transmission ended and Sirith turned to Kalen. "A new chapter begins." He stood moving beside her to the viewport. "One with better coffee, fewer pirates, and hopefully more laughs." Sirith nodded. "And with you by my side, I'm ready for whatever comes next." Kalen smiled, feeling the weight of the journey behind them and the promise of the stars ahead. "Then let's make it a good one." Together they watched the nebula swirl beyond the station, a reminder that in a universe vast and full of mystery, the smallest connections could shine the brightest. The sky above Calparis 9 was the color of battery acid and heartbreak. Corporal Nolan Vance stood ankle-deep in volcanic ash, waiting for the next moment that might kill him. Behind him, the forward outpost wheezed with a sick hum of patched-together shielding. Half the sentry turrets coughed when they turned, and somewhere in the mess hall, a genetically enhanced rat had declared dominion over the microwave. Morale hovered just above, "Please unplug me from life support." He adjusted his helmet. It made a sound like two rocks flirting. He hated this moon. The gravity was twitchy. The air tasted like burnt toast and melted tongue depressors. Worst of all, every damn morning his boots disappeared and reappeared exactly 4.2 meters from where he'd left them. No one had explained why. One scientist suggested quantum pranking. Nolan suggested the scientist take a long walk off a short ion beam. Today was different, though. Something buzzed along his spine like an old love letter written in static. The command tent was buzzing. Not with electricity. It never buzzed with actual electricity, but with whispers. Word had spread fast. The Alaran had requested a face-to-face diplomatic engagement. This never happened. The last time it had, 3 human diplomats had come back speaking only in plant metaphors. One now lived as a shrub. Nolan hadn't been chosen to attend. Of course not. He was barely chosen to refill the autocaf. Yet at the last moment, Captain Telmar had burst out of the tent, looked right at him, and said, "Vance, helmet on, smile optional. You're coming." So now he stood between 2 generals, pretending not to sweat and trying very hard to look like he was worth something more than cannon fodder with a decent jawline. Then she arrived. The ship didn't land so much as hover. disdainful of dirt, a disk of light and elegance, the kind of vehicle that said, yes, I park on air. Yes, my upholstery is probably smarter than you. It opened with a slow hiss, and out stepped Commander Thera of the Alaran. She was tall, not impossibly so, but enough that Nolan felt like a badly constructed action figure. Her skin shimmered like polished ivory. Her armor fit like the universe had designed it for maximum intimidation and aesthetic appeal, and her hair, black, straight, gleaming, fell over long, sharply curved ears that flicked ever so slightly when her eyes met his. She wasn't looking at the generals. She was looking at him. Nolan blinked. She kept walking. Every step was deliberate, like each one had been pre-approved by an artistic council. She stopped in front of the gathered humans. Her eyes were violet, not metaphorically, actually violet, and probably able to see through walls, thoughts, and possibly time itself. My name, she said, her voice like warm metal, is Commander Thera. I speak for the Alaran. We accept the terms of conditional ceasefire for this planetary sector. Temporarily. General Hassel nodded and opened his mouth to begin the long and terribly boring protocols of ceasefire declarations. Nolan zoned out. He always zoned out. If you didn't, you heard things like escalatory de-escalation clauses and unilateral autonomy convergence, and then your brain melted and tried to crawl out of your ears. It wasn't until she moved again, leaning ever so slightly toward him, that he snapped back to attention. She was too close. In a world of plasma cannons and orbital strikes, this was something else entirely. Intimate, dangerous, magnetic. She said very quietly, "Win this war, and you'll have me." Nolan froze. It wasn't the words, it was how she said them, like she was stating a weather forecast, like it was a perfectly normal thing to say to a corporal with lint on his collar. He didn't even process the meaning at first. His brain went, "Have you? What does that mean? As in tea and conversation? Or—" He made a sound. It was somewhere between a gasp and a squeak. One of the junior officers turned to look. Nolan coughed violently to cover it. "Allergies," he said. "Dust. You know." Thyra's lips curved into something not quite a smile, but not a smile either. The diplomatic meeting ended, as these things often did, with no explosions and far too many handshakes. Thyra returned to her ship without another word. Nolan watched her go, feeling like someone had kicked open the door of his life and dropped a grenade made of mystery and extremely good posture. Back at the outpost, he barely had time to process it before Ryan pounced. "You froze," said Private Rin, his bunkmate and designated Chaos Gremlin. "Tell me I'm wrong. She leaned in, said something, and you did that deer in headlights thing. You totally froze." "I didn't freeze. You looked like someone poured ice water down your soul." "Whoa, wait. Did she proposition you? Did the alien queen just hit on you? That's amazing. She's not a queen." She had queen energy. Like a commanding gaze, perfect hair, mysterious backstory. Bet her tears cure space cancer. Nolan groaned and collapsed onto his bunk. "She said something weird, okay? Probably some kind of alien idiom. Maybe it means, may your crops grow. She told you to win the war and you'd have her crops?" Rinna was already grinning. "That's poetry. Galactic-level flirting. You're doomed. I am not going to fall in love with a war criminal just because she has cheekbones sharp enough to slice time." "Cheekbones and ears," Rinna added. "Don't forget those ears. I saw them twitch. That was a flirt twitch. Go eat a gravity malfunction." Too late. Rinna was already composing a ballad on his datapad. He began humming a tune that suspiciously resembled the old Federation anthem, but with lyrics like, "He fought for the stars and won her heart, though interspecies love was not smart." Nolan sighed and pulled a blanket over his head. Somewhere, a storm began to build in the upper atmosphere. Somewhere else, an alien commander stared out at a broken sky, wondering if she'd just done something very foolish. Back in the barracks, Rinna's new chorus was picking up momentum. His heart went boom, his pants went tight, she whispered to him in the moonlight. Nolan considered desertion. Or maybe just strangling Rinna with a synth sock. The war wasn't over. but something else had begun. Nolan's name had never been used so many times in one day by people who weren't his commanding officer or his mother. He couldn't take 3 steps across the outpost without someone winking, elbowing, or whispering like he was a walking tabloid scandal. Someone left a bouquet of synth roses in his locker. Someone else drew a very flattering mural of him, and Commander Thyra locked in a romantic embrace atop a flaming space whale. And, of course, Private Ryan had changed his nameplate to read Alien Lover's Roommate. Please ask me about merch. It didn't help that a senior technician intercepted an encrypted signal the next morning. Not just intercepted, it came through the main console in the command tent, bounced off a weather satellite, shorted out a coffee dispenser, and then activated the karaoke module, which hadn't worked since someone tried to sing in binary. Everyone froze as a blue hologram blossomed from the center of the room, and there she was, Thera, shimmering, arms crossed, expression unreadable, and very slightly irritated. "Corporal Nolan Vance," she said, "pick up your toothbrush." There was a beat of silence. "What?" Nolan managed. "Your toothbrush," she repeated, and then somehow, with supreme Alaran dignity, clarified, "The blue one, with the frayed bristles. Look at it." Nolan, feeling like a man trapped in a lucid dream written by a malfunctioning AI, reached into his gear pouch, pulled out his toothbrush, and, yes, it was glowing. Then it spoke. More accurately, she spoke. "I am hijacking this basic hygiene instrument as a secure line of communication," her voice said from the brush's brittle head, regal and slightly exasperated. It was the only non-military device not firewalled with 30 layers of outdated human paranoia. Nolan stared at the toothbrush. The toothbrush stared back, possibly judging him. "Why me?" he asked the hologram, which had not blinked since appearing. Thyra's image paused. "Because you're not important enough to be watched." Rene cackled. Nolan sighed. The hologram flickered. "Also, you were the only human on that battlefield who didn't raise a weapon. You stared. You didn't attack." "I was stunned." "Yes," she said. "It was appealing." Nolan decided not to parse that sentence too deeply. She continued, "We need to talk. Alone." The toothbrush crackled. "Bring me somewhere with no surveillance, and don't drop me again." That was unpleasant. And then the hologram fizzled out, the karaoke machine sparked, and the toothbrush went silent. Rennie stared, then deadpanned. "You know, I knew that thing was judging me during oral hygiene inspection." Nolan ignored him, stuffing the brush into his pocket. 30 minutes later, he was crouched in the one place on base that had zero surveillance, behind the atmospheric regulator shed, where the signal dampeners created a perfect blind spot, and the odor was strong enough to discourage casual wanderers. He crouched low. "Okay," he muttered. "I'm here." The toothbrush buzzed. "Good. You're going to listen, and you're going to keep that ridiculous face you make when you're concentrating. It helps me know when your species is processing data." He scowled. "This is my neutral face." "Unfortunate," she said. "Now, I am not who you think I am." Nolan blinked. "You're not the terrifyingly poised alien commander with the cheekbones of doom?" "Number I am that. But I am not a loyal enforcer of the Alaran High Command. I am, let's call it a free agent. My position is precarious. And what I told you wasn't a line, it was a proposition. I'm really hoping you mean the political kind." "Both." He coughed and stared into the middle distance. Thera continued, "There are factions within my people. Some want peace, others want annihilation. The warlords grow more powerful by the day. But if this sector falls under human control, they will be forced to retreat and consolidate. It gives us time, options, and leverage." "So," he said slowly, "you want me to help win this war, so you can lose it?" "I want you to help win this battle," she corrected. "The war is more complicated. We both know your side's leadership wouldn't recognize a real victory unless it came with fireworks and a press release. But this, Calparis 9, this is different. Symbolic. A shift in momentum." He rubbed his face. "Why me?" "Because I can't approach your superiors. They'd arrest me or shoot me or ask me to fill out forms. which frankly is worse. But you, her voice softened, you're unpredictable, and you're human in the most baffling way. You look at me like I'm a problem you might want to solve with kindness. That's just my confused expression, he said. Still, it's rare. He let that sit. Then because the air behind the shed smelled like burnt algae, he muttered, Fine, I'll try. But if this gets me demoted to latrine duty, I'm mailing you a bottle of cleaning fluid. The brush vibrated approvingly. Agreed. Back at the barracks, Rennie had rebranded his side of the room with a new poster. Nolan, drawn with heroic muscles, clutching Thyra in one arm and a toothbrush in the other, mid-battle. You have no chill, Nolan groaned. I have marketing instincts, Ryan replied. You're a phenomenon, man. People love forbidden romance. The alien thing's hot right now. This is good for morale. I'm not dating her. Yet. Nolan retreated into his bunk, pulled the blanket over his head, and muttered to the toothbrush, We're all gonna die, aren't we? It buzzed once, comforting somehow. Outside, the sky rumbled. Inside, somewhere deep in the Alaran fleet, a command warship shifted its heading. Something was coming, and Nolan wasn't sure if he was the lucky one or the bait. The first sign of trouble was the cafeteria's decision to serve meat approximation slurry 3 days in a row. The second was that the sky turned green, not poetically green, but biohazard alert green. The third was the way every piece of tech Nolan touched started whispering, soon, in a vaguely threatening tone. And still, the toothbrush said nothing, which was somehow more terrifying. He kept it in a special pouch now, wrapped in static dampening fabric, hidden in his sock drawer beneath his least respected undergarments. If someone found it, he could claim it was a prank or, better, an experimental musical instrument. No one questioned weirdness anymore. Not since the auto-latrine began singing old Earth lullabies after 0200 hours. No one could figure out how to stop it. It always sang just slightly off-key. On the fourth day, the toothbrush finally vibrated. Come to the North Ridge outpost, said Thyra's voice. Bring goggles, and if possible, a sandwich. He blinked. A sandwich? My people have never perfected bread. I wish to evaluate the human achievement. Nolan grabbed two. He packed peanut butter and synth jelly on recycled wheat fiber and wrapped them in insulation foil because romance, clearly, was built on the willingness to brave toxic skies with snacks. He commandeered a speeder under the guise of perimeter scan, technically not a lie, and bounced across the blasted terrain toward the North Ridge. Dust devils twisted like bored spirits. The sky spat arcs of blue lightning sideways. He passed a field of derelict drones spelling what looked suspiciously like a bad word in Morse code. It was comforting, in a surreal way. When he arrived, she was already there, standing at the edge of the ridge, looking out over a cratered valley that glowed faintly with ion radiation. The air shimmered around her armor. Her hair was bound back in a single black braid, long ears twitching against the hiss of the wind. You brought sandwiches, she said without turning. I was told it was a critical, diplomatic gesture. She took one, peeled back the foil, and bit into it with the elegance of someone who had probably never eaten anything unprocessed by a machine priest. Her eyes widened slightly. This is dense, she said. It's traditional, Nolan said. Hard bread, sticky center, mild taste of childhood confusion. I like it, she replied. They stood in silence for a while. Around them, the wind crackled with static. In the distance, a transport ship exploded in the air. Unrelated, probably. Calparis 9 was unpredictable like that. Then Thyra handed him a small cube. It pulsed faintly, as if alive. This, she said, is a communication lattice map of the Alaran command network. With it, you can access their encrypted positions, supply lines, and coordination relays. Use it carefully, and burn it when done. He stared. You're handing me the key to your people's military backbone? No, she said. I'm handing it to you, Nolan Vance, because I believe in leverage, and because I trust your specific blend of mediocrity and wildcard behavior. You're exactly the kind of chaos they can't predict. He blinked. Is that a compliment? Mostly. He turned the cube in his hands. You're risking a lot. So are you, she said. Unless, of course, you enjoy sleeping next to someone who sings to your toothbrush in her dreams. He flushed. That was once. It was twice you mentioned my ears. I was delirious from synth protein poisoning. She stepped closer. You said they were graceful radio receivers of love. Rinna has a recording. Don't worry, it'll be on the barracks jukebox by Monday. A smile ghosted over her lips. You're not what I expected. You thought I'd be braver? I thought you'd be taller. He groaned. At least let me pretend I'm mysterious. You are, mysteriously unqualified for most of what you're about to do. They stood there, the space between them charged not with tension, but with something far stranger, a shared absurdity of two people standing on a dying moon, swapping sandwiches and secrets while the war groaned like a tired god in the distance. Then her wrist console buzzed. She tapped it, and her face hardened. There's a movement on the southern ridge. One of our splinter fleets. They're planning a forward push tonight. It's unsanctioned, desperate. He straightened. That's bad? They don't care about outcomes. They want martyrs. If they crash into your forces, they'll ignite every powder keg on this moon. And the ceasefire? Dissolved. Nolan stared out at the horizon. We can't stop them? I can't. Not officially. But if you can convince your base to pull back 20 clicks, reroute power to the old drone field, and activate the mirror beacons. He blinked. You want to blind them with disco lights and sneak our troops out the back? Essentially. That's the dumbest plan I've ever heard. It'll work, because they won't expect it. He looked down at the cube, then back at her. You know, this could get me executed. She leaned in. Win this war, she whispered again, and you'll have me. He made a sound halfway between a laugh and a sigh. You keep saying that like it'll help me focus. It won't, she said, but it'll keep you interested. And then she was gone, vanished in a shimmer of cloaking tech, leaving him alone on the ridge, holding a sandwich in a glowing cube, and a future that looked increasingly like a prank the universe had decided to commit. He turned back toward the speeder. Back at the base, Rinna had begun composing a new song. The Commander's Kiss and the Sandwich of Fate. He already had chords. Nolan didn't know what was coming next, but for the first time since arriving on Calpris 9, he had something better than orders or plans or promotions. He had momentum, and possibly a date, assuming they survived. The first thing Nolan did after returning to base was trip over a cleaning drone. The drone beeped once in what sounded like pure contempt, labeled him organic obstruction, and filed a complaint with the janitorial AI, which now refused to clean his side of the barracks. He was on a roll. Still, nothing could quite dull the electric current that ran through him. Not the ominous silence from the command tent. Not the way his toothbrush occasionally pulsed in his sock drawer like it was dreaming. Not even Ryan's new attempt at merchandise, commemorative mugs that read, "He fought for peace and also maybe a date." Nolan didn't sleep. He ran calculations instead. Bad ones in his head involving unit positions, terrain advantages, light refraction patterns, and the range of the ancient mirror beacons buried in the southern drone field. He kept forgetting numbers and replacing them with sandwich ingredients. At one point, he accidentally calculated the tactical efficacy of peanut butter at high velocity. The answer? Very low but extremely sticky. By 0400, he was standing in front of Lieutenant Colonel Harrow with the enthusiasm of a caffeine-deprived man, armed with desperation and exactly one glowing cube. You want us to pull back our entire front line, Harrow said flatly, so you can reroute power to an abandoned field full of rusted robot bones and activate light fixtures last tested during the Great Interstellar Prom of 2291. Yes, sir. And you're basing this on a tip from an alien enemy commander who spoke to you through a toothbrush. Yes, sir. There was a long pause, the kind of pause that suggested Harrow was weighing the tactical pros and cons of throwing Nolan directly into a sun. Then the colonel leaned back, laced her fingers, and said, "It's the dumbest thing I've heard all week." Nolan opened his mouth. "We're doing it," she continued, already punching commands into her tablet. "Because unfortunately, it's also the most coherent plan I've gotten since the diplomatic corps started sending us strategy updates via interpretive dance." 10 hours later, the base looked like someone had kicked over a colony of very focused ants. Units were repositioned, Power was rerouted, and engineers were elbow-deep in wiring that hadn't been touched since humanity thought moon boots were fashionable. The mirror beacons were another matter. "They're solar-powered," Rina said, squinting at a power coupling that looked like it had been chewed by an ambitious rodent. "Problem is, this moon hasn't seen real sun since the Alaran atmospheric bloom. Can we charge them manually?" "Only if you've got 5,000 hamsters with motivational playlists," Nolan groaned. "Alternative?" Rina grinned. "Oh, I've got a guy." The guy turned out to be a woman named Krivka, who claimed to be half cybernetic, half bored. She arrived on a hover skiff made of repurposed fusion coils and profanity. With her came 3 crates of modified microfission cells and a bottle of synthetic absinthe labeled, "For emergencies and terrible ideas." "I've been waiting to power up something that explodes in the visible spectrum," she said cheerfully, setting to work. By sundown, the mirror beacons hummed with unstable light. From above, they looked like a child had drawn constellations in neon. From ground level, they looked like a very effective distraction, assuming the approaching splinter fleet could be distracted by blinking colors and technical absurdity. The cube in Nolan's pocket pulsed twice. Incoming transmission. He slipped into the shadow of an abandoned turret and pulled it free. Thyra's voice greeted him, low and calm. "They took the bait. They're redirecting toward the light field." "Are you sure they're not into rave culture?" "Only incidentally. One of them once tried to weaponize dubstep. We do not speak of it." Nolan exhaled. "What's your position?" "Cloaked, 50 kilometers north. I can intercept their command relay and feed them false coordinates if you can keep the lights active for 10 more minutes." "Working on it," he said, then paused. "You okay?" "A beat. I've betrayed half my command structure and uploaded a forged personality matrix to delay my own recall. I'm wearing civilian boots. They squeak." "So, you're fine?" "I'm improvising, like a human." "Terrifying," he said, and hung up. Then the lights began to fail. One after another, the mirror beacons sparked, flickered, and dimmed. A power surge from the backup line overloaded the converters, which in turn triggered the fail-safe protocol that, of course, initiated a 3-minute performance of Ode to Joy in beeping tones. Loudly. "We are going to die," Renee whispered, crouched beside a control panel. "Not if we can manually reroute power through the drone field," Nolan said, pointing. "Krivka, can your skiff survive that radiation belt?" "If it can't," she said, already mounting it, "we'll all explode beautifully, and I won't have to pay off my poker debts." She vanished into the smoke. Minutes passed. Nolan's heart tried to invent a new rhythm for stress. The air smelled like hot copper and bad ideas. Then the lights flared, brighter than before. Every beacon lit up in sequence, casting shadows that danced across the valley like spirits in revolt. The Alaran splinter fleet, already mid-charge, veered wildly. Thyra's false coordinates hit them. Confused, they scattered. The lead cruiser spun out of alignment and crashed into the remains of an ancient observatory, which exploded in a very satisfying cascade of sparks. Silence fell. Then cheering erupted from the base. Officers slapped each other's backs. Drones performed celebratory loops. The janitorial AI begrudgingly resumed cleaning Nolan's quarters. He collapsed on the ground, arms splayed, laughing. The toothbrush buzzed in his pocket. "Well done," Thera said, voice soft. "You were predictably reckless." "I aim to misbehave," he muttered. "You'll have me," she added, almost too quietly to hear. He smiled up at the green sky. "Better than a medal." Rin appeared, covered in dust and holding 2 mugs. "We live. Have you considered a romantic duet for your next move?" "Not unless you want to sing harmony with a toothbrush." "I've done worse." They clinked mugs. The sky crackled. Somewhere another battle brewed. But for now there was peace and blinking lights and the lingering promise of something stranger than victory. Hope. Nolan wore a cape now, not officially sanctioned, not regulation, not even particularly practical. It was a blanket from the infirmary, stolen during a fever spell and repurposed into a symbol of what Rhine called heroic ridiculousness. He wore it into the debriefing room where 6 generals, 4 ambassadors, and 1 very annoyed diplomat bot awaited him. He stood in front of the council, hands behind his back, toothbrush hidden deep in his sock for luck. You pulled an entire division off the front line, growled General Anvar. Diverted half our power grid, reprogrammed historic artifacts, and manipulated a sovereign alien faction through interpersonal manipulation. Yes, sir, Nolan said. And you didn't log any of this through official command channels. No, sir. There was a pause. Then the diplomat bot leaned forward and asked, Did it work? Nolan blinked. Yes. Another pause. Acceptable outcome, it said. Renee leaned in from the back of the room. That's robot for nice job. In the days that followed, negotiations resumed. The ceasefire held. The Splinter Fleet, leaderless and embarrassed, retreated into the Orion fog with their egos in bandages. Thyra's defection was officially classified as a non-aligned diplomatic exchange, which was government speak for, we don't want to admit she outmaneuvered everyone. She was granted conditional amnesty under the Galactic Reconciliation Act, which included cultural tours, supervised mobility, and access to sandwich variety trials. Her first official request was to test grilled cheese. Nolan met her in the old observatory ruins. The sun was setting wrong, sideways due to orbital tilt, but it cast good shadows and the walls hummed gently from residual energy. She was already there, sitting on a bench that had miraculously survived multiple explosions and a rather aggressive squirrel infestation. You're late, she said. I was interrogated by a toaster. Did you win? I think I impressed it. It toasted a smiley face at the end. Thyra handed him a sandwich wrapped in foil. You'll like this one. He bit into it. His eyes widened. You added pickles? They were listed as an advanced condiment. You're dangerous. I try. They sat in silence for a moment, passing the sandwich back and forth like a peace treaty made of bread and courage. I thought I'd feel more triumphant, Nolan said eventually. You ended a war. Temporarily. You saved lives. Mostly by being unpredictable. She tilted her head. And now? He looked at her. The long ears, the sharp eyes, the smile she saved just for him. Now I figure out what the hell it means to have peace. I'm not great with downtime. She reached into her satchel and pulled out a small metallic orb. Then try this. He caught it. The surface shimmered, displaying schematics. What is it? A hybrid alliance project. Science, diplomacy, agriculture. 1 part weapon, 1 part research station, 2 parts chaos. I'm co-directing. I requested you. He stared. You want me to help build a future? Unless you'd rather go back to nearly dying in ditches. I mean, I do look good in mud. You look better when you're breathing. There was another long silence, then he said, You're serious? She nodded. I don't know how to build anything, he admitted. She stood, stepping close enough that her shadow fell over him like a promise. Neither did I, until I met someone who made me want to. He smiled. Let me guess. He was tall, mysterious, incredibly competent. No, she said. He was average height, extremely confusing, and alarmingly impulsive. But he made me laugh, and he reminded me that sometimes what we need isn't a perfect plan, just someone brave enough to keep going. He took her hand. They left the ruins behind them, walking side by side toward the transport pad. Above them, the stars blinked like a Morse code joke only the universe found funny. Back at base, the toothbrush had gone quiet, its mission apparently complete. Rinna watched them go from a rooftop, sipping from a new mug. Chaos Commander and Galactic Girlfriend. Piece by sandwich. Later she'd write a song, and maybe, just maybe, Nolan would finally sleep. Not because the war was over, but because for the first time, he knew what he was fighting for, and who he wanted to share the quiet with when it was done. The salvage permit was printed crooked, smudged with Theo's coffee, and expired 2 weeks ago. That didn't stop him from holding it up proudly as he stood in front of the customs officer at the orbital checkpoint. You realize this is for a debris belt in Sector 9K. You're heading to a classified diplomatic zone, the officer said, squinting at the document like it had personally offended him. Ah, yeah, Theo said, pushing his glasses up his nose. Clerical mix-up. Real common these days. Bureaucracy, am I right? The officer stared. Theo cleared his throat. So, can I go? Somehow, possibly through sheer awkwardness, he was waved through. Not before the officer mumbled, "Hope the vacuum eats you." He wasn't worried. He'd been vacuum adjacent plenty of times before. The problem was, this time, it was a 3-week trip to a station no one talked about anymore. Not because it was haunted, though the message board said so, but because it had been locked, redacted, and memory holed out of official existence, which, as far as Theo was concerned, made it perfect. The Carathian outpost, once a shining hub of diplomatic relations between half a dozen systems, now spun silently at the edge of Vesper expanse like a cracked snow globe. When Theo finally saw it, the station's silhouette looked like someone had tried to assemble a ring from leftover IKEA parts. A central torus floated unevenly around a spindle that blinked with dying lights. Something detached from the hull as he approached and floated gently away. It might have been a piece of insulation, or a body. Theo hummed the theme from a soap opera as he docked, mostly to stop himself from thinking about all the ways this could go wrong. The docking clamps snapped shut with a jolt that knocked over 3 snack wrappers and a hydrospanner. "Solid engineering," he muttered. The airlock hissed open. The smell hit him first: metal, ozone, and something that reminded him of burnt rice. He activated his headlamp, revealing peeling walls, flickering signs, and a floor scrubber bot twitching in a corner like it had developed a traumatic memory. "You and me both, buddy," Theo said, stepping past it. The station's systems were mostly unresponsive. His handheld scanner chirped occasionally, like it was bored. Theo wandered, documenting as he went, occasionally narrating out loud in what he imagined was a rugged explorer voice. "Day 3, he said. "Rations are running low, and I have begun talking to the vending machine." He slapped it. A packet of something called squid puffs fell out. "It listens." He wasn't supposed to be here long, but something about the place clung to him. Doors that shouldn't open did. Hallways curved at odd angles, some leading to blank walls, others to rooms that looked freshly abandoned. It was like the station hadn't shut down. It had just gone to sleep. Then on the 5th day, he found the wing that wasn't in the map archive. The door required a manual override, and it took him 20 sweaty minutes and a lot of swearing. It opened with a hiss and the screech of disuse. The air smelled ancient. She was sitting in the middle of the room. At first, he thought she was a mannequin or some kind of preservation project. She sat perfectly still in a floating chair, thin tubes running from her arms to the floor, wrapped in what looked like ceremonial robes now tattered by time. Her skin was pale, her hair long and white blonde, and her ears, Theo blinked, long, curved, like a crescent moon had whispered to her skull. "Oh," he said. Her eyes opened. Theo made a noise somewhere between a gasp and a hiccup. Her pupils adjusted, then locked on him. She didn't move, but the temperature in the room dropped, perceptibly, or maybe that was just his sweat deciding to evaporate all at once. "Hi," Theo said, holding up a hand. I come in peace?" She blinked once, then again, slower. A small screen embedded in the wall lit up, flickered, and died. He stepped forward, gently, like she was a wild animal or maybe royalty. "I'm Theo, short for Theobald, which is short for my parents had a cruel sense of humor." Her lips moved, but no sound came. He reached out his hand. Something surged in the room, not visually, but somewhere under the skin of the air. The lights brightened. The chair gave a soft chime. She inhaled visibly for the first time. Her hand twitched, then lifted, then cautiously touched his. A spark ran up his spine. She gasped, choked, coughed. Her voice came out hoarse but sharp. "You smell like boiled socks." Theo stared. I, thank you." She sagged back, head lolling slightly to the side. The tubes disconnected themselves from her arms with a series of mechanical clicks, and the floating chair hissed as it slowly descended to the ground. "I am Sareth," she said, the name crackling like a match on dry stone. "Envoy of the Lore Confederacy. How long?" Theo swallowed. About 30 years." She was silent. Then a quiet, "Well, that explains the dust." Theo let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. I was told this place was a scrap site. No one said anything about residents. Most don't talk about the dead. You're not dead? Close enough, she muttered, trying and failing to sit upright. My legs. They haven't been used, Theo said. I mean, I assume, not judging, just noticing. Are all humans this eloquent? No, I'm the special edition. She stared at him like she was calculating his worth in beans. He stepped closer, took a knee. Look, I'm not here to hurt you. I didn't even know you existed until 5 minutes ago. But if you want help, any help, I'll do what I can. She tilted her head. You? You're not a medic or a soldier. Nope, I'm a former scientist, mostly theoretical stuff. I also make an excellent lentil stew and once survived 3 days in a malfunctioning cryo toilet, so you know, resilience. Sareth almost smiled. Your species is stranger than I remember. Thanks, we've been working on it. A flicker of emotion crossed her face, something between exhaustion and relief. Then help me stand, Theo. He moved without hesitation, one arm under her shoulders, the other bracing her waist. She was light, too light, bones wrapped in years of stillness. As they rose inch by inch, the systems in the room hummed to life. Lights warmed, panels blinked. Somewhere deep in the station, a tone sounded, a signal no one had heard in decades. Sarah's feet touched the ground, her knees buckled. He caught her. She looked up at him. You are terrible at rescue. And yet, he said, here we are. She grunted, the sound almost a laugh. Very well, let us see if the universe still remembers who I am. Behind them, the walls pulsed. The outpost was waking up. Theo had expected some kind of miracle. He imagined that once Sareth stood, she'd suddenly glow with alien energy, maybe levitate, shoot a beam of light into the sky, or at the very least deliver a profound monologue that ended with interstellar music swelling in the background. Instead, she fell over and knocked him down with her. This is less majestic than I anticipated, she groaned, face down on the station floor. Same, Theo muttered, trapped beneath one of her knees. They spent several awkward moments disentangling themselves. Eventually, he helped her sit against the wall, both of them panting like they'd run a marathon, which for her muscles might not have been that far off. This station was built by bureaucrats, wasn't it? She said, eyeing the slightly curved walls. Only they would use slanted architecture and claim it was symbolic. It's supposed to represent unity, Theo said, brushing off his coat. A big circle of peace and understanding. Also, the guy who designed it was obsessed with Fruit Loops. She gave him a blank look. They're breakfast rings. Sweet, colorful, have no nutritional value. Much like diplomacy, now that I think about it. Sareth sighed and closed her eyes. I was left here to rot in a Fruit Loop. Fitting. He stood, fished out a small capsule from his utility belt, and shook it like a rattle. Nano muscle stimulation. It'll help speed up your recovery. Tastes like burnt celery. She opened one eye. Celery? Don't ask. Just take it. She took it. The effects weren't instant, but within minutes her fingers stopped twitching like broken antennae. Her voice grew stronger. She was still thin, and every movement looked like it cost her twice the effort. But she sat straighter now. He handed her a protein bar. She sniffed it. What is this made of? I want to say soy. You don't know? Well, the package just says Gray Blend number 4, so I'm going to guess hope and recycled algae. She stared at it, then took a bite. I've eaten worse. Once negotiated for 7 hours while eating a substance called crunch meat. It was neither crunchy nor meat. Theo chuckled, crouching nearby as she finished the bar. You were a diplomat? I was the lead envoy for the Lori Confederacy. I helped broker the Treaty of Burning Skies. I gave up my right to neural shielding for the negotiations on Vunari Delta. I once stared down a Kron general while he screamed in 5 directions at once. And for my efforts, I was labeled expendable and forgotten. Wow, he said. And here I am, a man who once got kicked out of the Earth Astrobiology Society for mistaking a fungus for sentient life. Her brow rose. Was it sentient? Technically, no, but it had an attitude. She actually laughed, a short, breathy sound that startled both of them. Then her expression softened, and something flickered in her gaze. Why did you take this job, Theo? He shrugged. Needed the credits. Also, I was promised I'd find rare salvage. Didn't think it would be a person. I am not salvage. Obviously, you're more like ultra premium, limited edition, possibly cursed collector's item. She narrowed her eyes. He raised his hands. Kidding. Mostly. She shifted her weight, testing her legs again. I will walk. That's optimistic. I must begin again. With steps they practiced. Or rather, Theo hovered nervously while Sarah took tiny, awkward steps like a baby deer wearing a robe 2 sizes too big. The station helped. As it woke, its systems reactivated in fragments. A voice with a soothing tone, clearly designed by someone who thought calm equals creepy, began offering medical guidance. Muscle deterioration detected, suggested course, low-gravity treadmill rehabilitation. Theo blinked. Low-gravity treadmill? There's a gym? There was, Sarah muttered, unless the pigeons took it over. There are pigeons? I meant metaphorically. Your kind is fond of metaphors. Following the automated guidance, they reached the med bay. It was dusty but operational. The lights buzzed. A single medical drone hovered into view, scanned Theo, beeped, and zapped him with a mild shock. Hey! Contagion prevention protocol active, it said. Sarah raised an eyebrow. You have a reputation even among machines. I touched one fungus, once the treadmill had survived. Barely. They helped Sarah onto it, and Theo adjusted the gravity to 60%. Her legs trembled. The drone hovered ominously nearby with what looked like a spray nozzle labeled motivational burst. Don't you dare, she told it. The treadmill started. She walked. She lasted 6 minutes before collapsing back into the chair. But her expression wasn't despair. It was triumph. You've been in that chair for 30 years, Theo said softly. I know, and now I am not. Her fingers flexed. It's strange. I expected nothing. Just the endless void. That's overrated. I've seen the void. It smells like old coffee and broken dreams. She chuckled again, twice in one day. She wasn't sure her face remembered how. That night, or what passed for night on a drifting station, they sat in the old command hub, surrounded by blinking screens and half-dead consoles. Theo brought 2 more protein bars, which Sarah accepted with resignation. Theo? Yeah? Why didn't you leave when you found me? He leaned back in his seat, staring at the slow-turning stars outside the viewport. I think I've been waiting my whole life to do something that mattered. She nodded slowly. And you believe I matter? I think you matter enough that someone should have come sooner. And I think if the universe has any justice, it'll give you another shot. A long pause, then. Perhaps I'll start by learning how to walk without falling on your foot. Theo glanced down. I think one of my toes is permanently offended. Sarah smiled. Below them, in the forgotten network of the station sublayers, something beeped. A new signal had been triggered by the medbay's activation. A passive alert, decades old, began to transmit. Not loudly, not immediately detectable, but far, far away, in a corner of space not yet civilized, a receiver blinked awake. And someone noticed. Back on the station, Sarah took another step. Theo held out his hand again, just in case. The morning began with an argument between Sarah and a coffee maker. Theo had rigged it from salvage parts, a thermal recycler, a disused hydroponics tube, and something that used to be a bidet. It gurgled ominously every time it brewed, and occasionally hissed steam at a pitch that sounded like someone whispering, "Run." This machine is possessed, Sarah said, glaring at it as it spat a brown substance into her cup. It's not possessed, Theo replied, wiping his hands on a rag. It's passionate. It tried to bite me. It doesn't have teeth. It has ambition. I respect that, but I still won't drink its blood. Theo took a sip from his own mug and winced. Okay, fair. Maybe I installed the flavor module backwards. Did it come with a flavor module? It was labeled Experimental Sludge Profile. I was optimistic. They sat across from each other in what used to be the station's diplomatic conference chamber. Most of the chairs were missing. One of them had grown moss. A single hollow screen above the table kept trying to display an agenda from 30 years ago, but kept glitching out after the word welcome. Sareth turned her cup slowly in her hands. You understand what reactivating this station means, don't you? I assume free rent? It means the beacon has gone out. Someone, somewhere, knows this place is live again. Could be automated. Could just be a ping in the dark. You don't believe that? I really want to. Sareth leaned back. Then prepare yourself. The galaxy doesn't like when ghosts start whispering. Theo pretended not to hear the sudden shift in her tone. He busied himself by unpacking a crate labeled maintenance supplies that appeared to mostly contain socks. The next few days followed a rhythm. They repaired small systems, one by one. Hallway lights, gravity plates, old diplomatic archives, most of which had been mysteriously overwritten with cooking tutorials in 16 languages. Theo spent half a day trying to learn how to make a dish called Glornak fluff before realizing the ingredients included a sentient yeast now illegal in 4 sectors. Sareth walked more. Every morning, she made a circuit of the station's central ring. Her gait still had the stiffness of someone learning how to inhabit her body again, but she grew steadier. She didn't stumble. She didn't rely on Theo's arm. Once, she even outran a malfunctioning cleaning bot that mistook her robes for a spill. Progress, she said, panning beside him in the comms hub. Also, your cleaning bots are aggressive. They were programmed by a war vet who hated dust. I can tell. They didn't talk much about what came next. It hovered around them like static. There were too many possibilities, too many risks, and neither of them wanted to ask the big questions out loud. Who would come now? What would they want? And what would they do if Sareth's return wasn't welcome? Then the transmission came. It arrived while Theo was deep in a maintenance shaft, trying to coax a stubborn air circulator into behaving with gentle threats and the occasional wrench. The station buzzed once. A tone pinged through the walls. And then a voice, warped, choppy, sputtered into the command hub speakers. Carathian outpost. Signal acknowledged. Reestablishing handshake. Identity confirm requested. Sareth froze. Theo slid out of the shaft covered in grease and looking like he'd fought a small mechanical squid. That wasn't one of our systems, was it? He asked, already knowing the answer. No. Great, he said. On the upside, I think I fixed the air scrubber. Sareth stood, walked slowly to the console, and tapped a control. A flickering image appeared. No face, just a code signature. A numeric string that meant nothing to Theo but made Sareth go very still. That's a Lore Warband ID, she said. From the old grid. Warband? That doesn't sound like the peaceful arm of your people. It's not. They were sent to contain threats. Theo swallowed. So what exactly is their opinion on envoys who vanished for 30 years? Depends on the mood of the commander, and whether they brought snacks. He stared. That was a joke, Theo. Right. Huh. You got me. More importantly, she added, fingers moving across the console, this ID is old. Very old. They shouldn't be using it unless... Unless what? Unless they're not supposed to be here. Theo rubbed his temples. So either this is a rescue mission or a cleanup. Or both. They watched the screen. The handshake request repeated, now with a ticking countdown. Do we answer it? Theo asked. Sareth didn't reply immediately. She stood with her hands folded behind her back, staring out at the stars like they held a grudge against her. If I answer and they recognize me, it could reignite something best left buried. And if we don't, they'll come anyway, just more suspicious. Theo tapped his comms badge. I say we stall them. Send a partial ping, just enough to say, hello, not enough to say, tea is ready. Sareth nodded. Agreed. He leaned in, pressed a few keys and sent out a pulse signal. It was basic, unencoded, and neutral. Then he sat back. They waited. In the silence that followed, Sareth said, Did you ever think you'd be here, in the middle of nowhere, helping an exiled alien diplomat repair a derelict station while dodging possibly hostile visitors? Theo nodded solemnly. Since I was 10. Truly. Number at 10, I thought I'd be a rock star with a pet dragon. Sarah smiled. You might still get the dragon. He tilted his head. Really? No. Hours passed. They busied themselves with station tasks. Theo fixed a defunct cargo loader by kicking it. Sareth recalibrated the diplomatic AI, which now offered conflict resolution advice based entirely on cooking metaphors. Apparently, war is just undercooked compromise, she said dryly. Then, just as they were about to shut down for the night, the long-range sensors chirped. Theo stared at the screen. Something's inbound. Ship? Yeah, single vessel. Small, fast, old. Friend? Too early to say, but they'll be here in 2 days. Sareth turned to him. We have 2 days to make this place look less like a haunted Fruit Loop. He nodded. We can do that. And if they're hostile? Theo smiled. Then I'll hide behind the coffee maker. It's the most aggressive thing on this station. Sareth laughed. Then quieter, she said, Thank you, Theo. For what? For reaching out your hand. He didn't answer, but he smiled. The visitor arrived in a ship that looked like it had been cobbled together from bad ideas and spare parts. Theo squinted at the approaching vessel on the external display. Is that duct tape? Sareth leaned closer. That's quantum tape. Holds across subspace fractures and emotionally unstable wormholes. I once used that to fix my toilet. Then your toilet has better tech than most smugglers. They watched as the ship docked. It latched onto the outer port like a stubborn barnacle. The docking clamps whined. A red light blinked and blinked until it gave up in exhaustion and turned green. Theo stood from his console, stretched, and turned to Sareth. Ready to meet whoever thinks this place is still open for business? I'm always ready. I'm just never in the mood. The airlock hissed. A cloud of overly dramatic mist puffed out, clearly added for effect. And then the hatch opened. Out stepped someone who looked like he had 3 knives, 2 backup knives, and a moral compass that had been eaten by a raccoon. The man was short, wiry, and wore a coat made of what might have been synthetic eel skin. His eyes scanned the station with practiced suspicion. He nodded once. I expected corpses, he said. You're early, Theo replied. We haven't had time to become them. The man grinned. I like that. Sarcasm in the face of threat. Name's Rix, freelance reclamation expert. You'd call me a scavenger, but I prefer the term post-opportunistic resource consultant. I call that looting, Sareth said. Rix turned to her and blinked, then blinked again. You're Lore? Yes, alive. Currently. I thought your kind vaporized this station. Rumors said the diplomat stationed here went rogue, or insane, or both. I've had time to reflect. Rix whistled. Well, this changes the value of my visit. He stepped inside without invitation, glanced at the exposed wiring, the flickering hallway lights, and the coffee machine growling in the corner. This place is haunted. It's been saying that about you, Theo muttered. Rix's grin widened. I'm here for a thing. Long story. Maybe you can help. Then I leave. Everyone wins. What thing? Sareth asked. Rix reached into his coat and pulled out a small cube. It projected a grainy hologram of a plant, or something like a plant, except it was glowing, gently pulsing, and had what looked suspiciously like teeth. This, Rix said, legend calls it the Arathis seed. Super rare, bioengineered, said to adapt to any environment and cleanse it. Also may be sentient, depends on who you ask. Theo narrowed his eyes. You're looking for it here? Records say it was brought to this station for diplomatic gifting. You know, back when everyone was pretending to be friends. Sareth stared at the image. The Arathis was here, yes. It was gifted to the station as a gesture of peace. Its energy field was unstable. We kept it in containment. Where? Storage sublevel, red sector, which is currently flooded with radiation and cleaning drones that bite. Rix cracked his knuckles. Sounds like a Tuesday. Point me there. Theo held up a hand. Hang on. What do you want it for? Someone's paying me very well to find it. And if it's dangerous, then I'll charge extra. Sareth and Theo exchanged a look. She nodded slightly. Fine, Theo said, but we're going with you. Of course, it's more fun with a crowd. They descended into Red Sector, which Theo had been actively avoiding because it smelled like burnt metal and old regrets. The radiation shields flickered as they passed, and one of the cleaning drones tried to eat Theo's boot. "That's the third one this week," he muttered, shaking it off. Rix whistled as he walked. "I love a place with character and potential lawsuits." They reached the containment chamber. The doors were sealed, but Sareth's handprint still registered. The chamber hissed open. Inside, the Arothus was still glowing. Barely. Its petals twitched in the recycled air. A faint hum filled the room, a kind of melodic pulsing, like the station's heartbeat had synced to the plant. Rick stepped forward. "Careful," Sareth warned. "It's reactive." "To what?" "Mood, memory, sometimes sarcasm." Rix tilted his head. "Sounds like my ex." He reached out with a containment sphere. As soon as it neared the Arothus, the plant shimmered, and a wave of heat rolled through the chamber. Theo yelped. "Is it singing?" "No," Sareth said. "It's warning us." The Arothus pulsed again. A tendril rose and brushed Rix's jacket. The containment sphere sparked, overloaded, and exploded with a small pop. Rix stepped back, unburned but annoyed. "Right, new plan." "What exactly is your employer planning to do with it?" Theo asked. Rix hesitated. "Maybe weaponize it." Sareth stepped in front of the Arothus. "Then it stays here. Then I don't get paid. Then you don't get vaporized." The plant's glow intensified as if seconding her threat. Rix sighed. "Fine, fine. Let's pretend I suddenly grew a conscience. Keep your living shrub." He turned, marched out, and muttered all the way back to the lift. "Diplomats, plants with emotions, weird stations with murder coffee. Should have stuck to asteroid mining." Later in the command hub, Theo sipped a newly brewed cup of questionable sludge. "So that was exciting." Sareth nodded. "He'll be back." Theo pointed at the display. "He also left a tracker on our hull. I'll disable it. Think we should move the Arothus?" "Number, but we should prepare for guests." "Hostile ones?" "The worst kind, curious ones." Theo sighed. "I miss when the biggest danger was a confused janitorial AI." "Progress," Sareth said. Theo stood. "I'll make dinner. Want to try Glornak fluff again?" Sareth looked up. "You found sentient yeast?" "Don't ask questions you don't want answers to." She smiled. "Fine, I'll help, but I draw the line at glowing mold." Theo grinned. "Deal." Outside the station, the stars shifted. Ships stirred. Somewhere beyond the edge of map space, a signal pulsed back to life, and the universe listened. The station's silence didn't last long. 3 days after Rix's departure, 3 more ships appeared. Not sleek, not military, not corporate. Independent, fast, dented, like a flock of steel birds that had forgotten what maintenance was. They held orbit just far enough to be menacing and just close enough to be nosy. "They're scanning us," Theo said, tapping the comms console. "Aggressively. One of them just tried to hack our weather system." "This station doesn't have a weather system," Sareth replied. "They're very bad at hacking." Another beep. "Now they're demanding to dock. All 3 at once. Coordinated rudeness." Sareth folded her arms. "They smell Rix's failure, and they think we're easy." Theo tapped the console again. "Should I tell them we're out of snacks and glowing alien plants?" "Tell them we're armed." "We're not. They don't know that." Theo leaned into the mic. "Attention, unidentified vessels. This outpost is under restoration by diplomatic authority. Trespassers will be met with full defensive force. Also, the coffee machine is sentient and angry." A moment passed. Then a message blinked on screen. "Requesting peaceful dialogue. No harm intended. Interested in Arothus seed? Will pay." Theo read it twice. "At least they're polite extortionists." "They're gauging our weakness," Sareth said. "They'll pretend to negotiate, then try to take it. We could bluff. We could lie. We could throw the plan at them and run." Sareth smiled. Tempting. They prepared. Theo rigged fake turrets using plumbing, blinking lights, and one of the cleaning bots wearing a colander helmet. Sareth modified the station's comms to broadcast diplomatic warning tones, layered with something called empathic resonance dissuasion, which sounded like a haunted saxophone. The visitors docked anyway. One came aboard. Human. Well-dressed in a way that implied money or at least excellent forgery skills. He introduced himself as Mullen Dex and bowed with a flourish. "This is a misunderstanding," he said smoothly. "We simply wish to recover a vital specimen with historical value. We would compensate you generously." Theo looked at Sareth. Sareth looked at the man's shoes, which were far too clean. "The Arathis is not for sale," she said. Malin smiled wider. "Everything is, eventually." "Even ethics?" Theo asked. "Oh, those are dirt cheap." He stepped closer. "You must understand, that plant isn't just rare, it's a key to restoring entire biomes, healing poisoned worlds. My employer believes—" "Your employer wants control," Sareth interrupted, "the kind that grows roots and can't be stopped." Malin tilted his head. "And you're hoarding it. For what? Nostalgia?" "We're protecting it," Theo said. Malin sighed. "You can't protect it from what's coming." "We've been trying to protect the galaxy from what it used to be," Sareth replied. "Big difference." He gave a tiny shrug. "So be it." The second he turned, Theo hit the silent alarm. The station responded. Theo's fake turrets rose with dramatic clanks and spun wildly. The diplomatic AI screamed, "Negotiate this!" and began playing diplomatic death metal. The cleaning drones swarmed the hallways with mops and a thirst for vengeance. The visiting ships, confused by the noise and the botched subterfuge, tried to undock. One accidentally ejected its cargo hold. Another jettisoned its captain. Malindex turned back to them in stunned silence as the hallway lights flashed red, then green, then confetti-colored. "Was that confetti?" "We're a very festive war zone," Theo said. "You people are insane." "Tell your employer," Sarah said, stepping forward, "that the Arathis is not a weapon. It's a trust. It stays where it's rooted. If he tries again, we'll send him a fruit basket. With teeth." Malin stared, then turned and left. Later, in the quiet that followed, Theo sat with his feet on the console, sipping from a cup labeled "Definitely Not Poison." "Well, we survived a diplomatic incident, 3 criminals, and a plant that sings when you lie." Sarah sat beside him, her legs stretched out, not trembling for the first time. "We rebuilt something that didn't want to be forgotten. The coffee machine, the station, and maybe me." Theo grinned. "The coffee machine still wants revenge." Sarah tilted her head. "You could leave, you know. Now that things are calmer, go back to your ship, your smuggling, your freedom." Theo shrugged. "I think I like fixing things, even haunted stations with war plants and traumatized diplomats." Sareth raised a brow. "In the cleaning bots? I've learned to respect their culture." Outside, the stars spun slowly, like they weren't in a rush anymore. Sareth stood and walked toward the observation window. No limp, no fear. Just steps. Grounded, steady, hers. Theo joined her. "So what now?" "We guard it. The Arathis. This station. The quiet. We make it matter again." He nodded. "Sounds like a plan." Behind them, the AI whispered a recipe for galactic peace involving roasted mushrooms. The plant in the chamber pulsed gently, calm at last. And in the stillness between stars, 2 lives, once broken, now bound, kept watch.